Good morning. Good morning, morning. There you go. Welcome back. Welcome back after this crazy 2, whatever years we had. It felt like a decade, but we're here. Even masked, we're back. I've seen last night how excited everybody was to see each other back. Hugs, no hugs, depending on the color of lanyard you have, but it's just amazing. And not only are we here together with a pretty big bunch, there's also a lot of people joining us virtually. So I also want to say a big hi to everybody who is joining us virtually, because I can tell you, COVID did not stop us. Together we are. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Annette Bakker. I'm the president of the Children's Tumor Foundation, and I have the honor to open this very, very first summit. The summit is in fact a combination of a forum that we were doing for a long time already for the patients every year, and the Volunteer Leadership Council, and the amazing staff had the idea, why not combine it? And here we are, 400 strong, in person and virtually. Exactly. And this is due to some people that I really would like to thank. First of all, the co-chairs, Bob Listernick and Verena Statke, not only two amazing NF doctors, but also such good friends of the NF community. Thank you so much for doing that. This event wouldn't be here without an equally amazing planning committee. And I just wanted to mention them quickly. Dale Burke, Daniel Bonadis, Remy Bogan, Adam Goodkant, Anita Gribben, Shannon McNall, Kristen Meek, and Jeff Powell. Thank you so much, guys, for putting together an absolutely amazing program. But it wouldn't be fair to go on without thanking a few staff members. There is the two rock stars, Connie Sorman and Kate Kelts, who are here. I also wanted to thank Tresanne Rose, who has decided to move on, but she has been also really instrumental in organizing this absolutely stunning event. And I would like to thank the entire CTF staff. We work as a big family, obsessed with ending NF. I also want to sincerely thank a delegation of the board of directors of CTF who joined us here today. They spent tireless hours strategizing, planning, thinking with us day in, day out. And I can assure you that this board does everything needed to end NF as quickly as they can. Thank you. And then my last thanks go out to the sponsors of this summit. Presenting sponsor, Alexion and AstraZeneca Rare Disease. Innovative sponsor, SpringWorks Therapeutics. Advocate sponsors, NFlexion and Recursion. And Friends of NF, Helix, and Be the Difference through their Be Kind Patient Scholarship Program. Visit their tables and also their virtual booth on this super cool WOVA app. And of course, without you, this wouldn't be an event. So thank you so much for being here in person and virtually. Over the next few days, we will inspire each other, bond again as a community, learn, laugh, and even cry. Bond because we're in this fight together. Inspire because ending NF is hard, but we have the hope in our hearts and heads that so many new things are happening now that there is a chance that we will be ending NF soon. Learn about the incredible advances in NF treatments, because treatments we want. Learn about the critical role you, patients and families, play in the fight to end NF. We want to learn from you what is needed in order to end NF quickly. I hope you will walk away as the empowered leaders we need to go back in the communities and tell our stories to raise awareness, to raise the fund, and to end NF quickly. We are here because all of you inspire, and I think I can say you electrify us every day. You are the reason why we are motivated to work so hard to end NF. I speak to patients and parents all the time about tumors growing, not responding to treatments, becoming malignant even sometimes, and families are struggling to make the right decisions around treatment and diagnostics. This is something all of you know so well. Our heart breaks every time we hear these stories. And I want nothing more than stop this heartbreak. Our goal at the Children's Tumor Foundation is to end that struggle for you and give you and your families your lives back. We are obsessed with bringing more effective treatments for all manifestations and all forms of NF. More effective imaging tools, more effective diagnostic tools, more effective care. And as I look across the room today and I reflect on my 10 years at the Children's Tumor Foundation, I know many of you, but what is amazing is that I've seen a lot of first-time attendees this year. Thank you for joining our movement. Together, yes, exactly. Because together we've accomplished a lot, but there's still a little bit of work to do. Over the years, together with the other NF organizations, and I also want to mention them for being with us as one big family to end NF, we've advocated for funding from the CDMRP, Congressional Directed Medical Research Funds. The NF program started with $8 million in 1996. And now this year, we can tell you that we have a record $25 million that will be directed to NF research this year. In Europe, we advocated to be part of the first ever European grant for NF research, a $26 million grant over 3 years, because we know that money will be able to help us end NF. We have the first drug approved for NF by the FDA. And I hear some of you say, well, okay, it's only for one manifestation within NF1. I hear you. But I also want to tell you, don't worry. Because cystic fibrosis, their first drug that was approved, only helped 4% of the patients. 10 years later, because of the energy this first drug approval induced, they have now multiple drugs approved, and 98% of the patients are being helped in cystic fibrosis. And I always say, if they can do it, we can do it. And I have the proof that something really cool is happening. Because of this drug approval, 10 companies now are investing in NF treatments, and 2 of them are entirely dedicated to NF. They think like us. They can do it. We can do it. We have the first platform trials. It's a way of saying faster trials to test multiple drugs at the same time within the same clinical trial. And they're expanding. We attack NF globally. As you heard yesterday from Kate Kels, we have a global NF registry, which now exists in English, of course, French, Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, and soon German. We already have more than 10,000 patients. But 10,000 patients in 2.5 million is not enough. We need to grow this registry. We have global platform trials. We have global observational trials, like you will hear today from Rob Avery. We have global diagnostic criteria that were put together by an incredible team of global clinicians. Although I can't predict what's going to happen in the next 10 years, but it makes me excited. And it starts feeling that something impossible can happen. We can end NF. And we can tell NF now, you will not win. Now it is my pleasure to introduce a dear friend, Cynthia Cassandro, Executive Director of Global Patient Advocacy at Alexion, our presenting sponsor for the NF Summit, And she's been a leader in rare disease, focused on serving patients and families affected by rare disease and devastating conditions, through the discovery, development, and commercialization of life-changing medicine. Cynthia has 30 years experience in healthcare, where she began as a registered nurse. And she has spent the last 10 years focused on patient advocacy, patient access, and education in rare and severe neurological diseases. Cynthia is also a volunteer with the Rhode Island Disaster Medical Reserve Corps, where her most recent service is focused on efforts around COVID. So with that, I would like to invite Cynthia to come up and say a couple of words.
Good morning, everybody. Excuse me. And thank you, Annette, and the entire CTF staff. It is such a privilege to be here to kick off this summit and representing Alexion AstraZeneca rare disease. So I don't want to make any arrogant assumptions that everybody here knows Alexion and that you're familiar with what we do. So very briefly, Alexion and our work is guided by people like you who are living with rare disease. And in fact, this month, Alexion celebrated our 30-year anniversary in working in the rare disease space. So we are humbled and also want to recognize the fact that we're newer to working with CTF and newer to working with neurofibromatosis. And that said, I want to mention that we have a special sauce on our team. This is a person known as Matt Hay, who is our Director of Advocacy for neurofibromatosis at Alexion. And Matt is the special sauce because he is the person who is really accelerating our learning and connections to CTF, the NF families, to the healthcare experts, and the broader NF advocacy organizations. And I think we're all very fortunate to have what I call the Matt factor to bridge us closer together. So I realize this is a privilege to be here, knowing that Alexion is newer to this community with an FDA-approved product for NF1-PN, known as Koselugo. And this treatment would not be possible without the incredible dedication, the commitment, hard work, and sacrifice of so many people in this room today. You are all heroes, and we are humbled, and we are grateful. That said, we have a lot to do in building trust, credibility, and partnership, and finding ways to continue to advance our research, our medicine, our tools and resources, and to help all those living with neurofibromatosis. This is why we're thrilled to be here in Chicago at this incredible meeting organized by CTF. And I met a family in the lobby last night, and they said, every time I am with the CTF community, my heart gets bigger. I feel the same. So looking forward to spending a wonderful time with all of you this weekend. Thank you again for this opportunity. Thank you, Annette. Thank you for everybody at CTF and everything you do.
I like the Matt factor. And I also like that your hearts get bigger every time you're at these events, because this is exactly how I think we all feel about it, is we go home stronger than we come. Now it is my honor to introduce our keynote speaker of this conference, Paul Raci. Kind of nervous, because not every day that I'm facing a 6-time Oscar nominee of this incredible movie, The Sound of Metal. I don't know if you saw it, but it's a movie that touched me deeply. Paul, there is one sentence that really struck with me during one of the interviews you had for your Oscar nomination. And you said about the deaf community that they say, nothing about us without us. And that was something that struck me, because that is really what our NF community stands for. Our patients are all in, and there is nothing about us without us. I don't want to take any of Paul's incredible talk away, but I'm pretty sure that you will understand very quickly when Paul starts talking why he is such a perfect keynote speaking for this inaugural summit. Please welcome me please join me, in welcoming the actor, the musician, and the CODA, Child of Deaf Adults, to the stage. Paul.
Well, good morning. This is beautiful to see you all come together like this. It reminds me of, well, you know, I'm a CODA. My parents were deaf. I grew up right here in Chicago. I'm a Chicago boy, 100% White Sox fan. Grew up in Humboldt Park, not too far away from here. I grew up not realizing, I mean, there was no such thing as sign language interpreters. I thought that the language that ASL is my native tongue. It's what I learned to communicate with before speaking. So I didn't really know that there were other kids like me. I just knew that I had this language I talked with my parents, and I thought it was a secret language. I thought nobody else knew it. But when I went to the Deaf Club, which they went to every week on Irving Park Road here, I saw other kids that were like me. And so we had our own little language. So anyway, I'm telling you that because today I belong to an international organization called CODA International. And we get together every year, and every 2 years, like we went to France 3 years ago, got together. We're going to South Korea next year. There are CODAs all over the world, and American Sign Language is only unique to America. There's Chinese Sign Language, Japanese Sign Language, Polish Sign Language, Russian Sign Language. So we go all over the world. And it's kind of funny because when I leave a conference of CODAs, I get all pumped up about who I am. I'm not a deaf person, but I'm not a hearing person. I'm a CODA. There's a big difference. That's how I think. That's how I breathe. That's what I am. So when I'm with my fellow CODAs, we have a thing when we open up the conference, like if I'm going to give a speech, I'll say, hello, my name is Paul Raci, and my parents were deaf. And the whole crowd goes, oh. So it's kind of a joke within our place. I mean, no group I'm sure people here that are living with NF don't want anybody's sympathy or, oh, you know, they just want you to look at them as human beings and share this human experience we're having today. Instead of, oh, the whole focus goes on the awe. And there's no awe about it. So anyway, I'm going to tell you my story. And even though it's not the same story as yours, you'll see some similarities there because the struggle is real. I want to focus on, telling you stories. I'm going to tell you my story. And we're talking about self-advocacy here. And that's the only way it's going to happen. Nobody's going to give you anything. You have to advocate for yourself. But my parents were both deaf. They were deafened from spinal meningitis. My father at the age of 11 months, my mother at the age of 5. If you think about a 5-year-old child, they've already acquired language, they're speaking, they're a little person there, and then you take hearing away from them. It's a very devastating and traumatic experience. So there were 2 different deaf parents I had, but nonetheless, that's what I had. They met at the Chicago Deaf Club, which is, like I said, they had to go there every week. There's something about human beings. They want to be with like-minded spirits or like-minded people. People are going through the same experience, which is what we're doing here right now. And there's also a joke in the deaf community when it's time to go home and the place has to close, they start flickering the lights so the deaf people will see that it's time to go home. But that doesn't mean they're going to go home. They're going to stand there and talk and talk and talk in sign language for another hour or two while hey, it's time to get out of here, But they only, in those days, in the 50s, they only saw each other once a week, twice a month maybe. Now we've got all these devices, computers, and ways of communicating. You know, I have brothers and a sister that live here in Chicago, and we've never been closer. I'm in LA, but we've never been closer since the pandemic because we Zoom every week. So it's a wonderful thing. So growing up, as I said, there was no closed captioning for movies, no texting, no devices. Everything was in black and white. Color wasn't even invented yet. There was, no gay people, no transsex. It's just black and white. That's it. Eisenhower was the president. And one of the most moving experiences that I ever had that really struck me or shaped me, molded me, was when television came along. We were living in Humboldt Park, and there was a theater on Division Street called the Vision Theater. And there was a movie there that was playing, was called Love Me Tender. Elvis Presley was in it. And my mother was deaf, and she spoke because she still could remember speaking from it being a child, and she was deaf, and she read lips a lot, but she signed with my father. And she said, I was 7, I think, in 1956. I was about 8 years old. And a very young 8 years old, very impressionable. And she asked me if I wanted to go see this movie, Love Me Tender, with Elvis Presley. And we saw him on Ed Sullivan. Ed Sullivan was the biggest show around. I had to watch it every Sunday. And it was controversial, and there was this movie out. So we went to see it. I didn't realize, though, when we went to see the movie that, my mother's deaf. She can't hear anything. But she didn't let me know that I was probably going to have to interpret the whole movie for her. So we're watching Love Me Tender on the screen. She's sitting here, and I'm sitting here, and I'm like signing everything to her, the whole movie. It's kind of probably where I really first felt myself being an actor, because I had to be Elvis Presley, I had to be Richard Egan. The movie starred Richard Egan. Deborah Pageant was the love interest. Richard Egan was Elvis Presley's brother, and it's the Civil War time. So when it's time for the Civil War to happen, Richard Egan gets sent off to fight, and Elvis stays behind. He's the younger brother. And the war goes on, and Richard Egan never comes home. So Elvis marries Deborah Pageant, who was engaged to Richard Egan, who went off to the war. Now, I'm 8 years old. I'm like, what the hell's going on here? This is a really interesting story. Well, then Richard Egan comes back from the war, and my mother was transfixed. It was like a soap opera. But Elvis married his fiancée. Now I'm really into it. I can't believe this is happening. And all this stuff is going on. There's a scene I remember. Elvis is laying in bed with Deborah Pageant. They have all their clothes on. And he says, and he's all upset because his brother came home, and he says to her, well, I bet you when you're laying in bed with me, you're thinking about him, ain't you? And I was like, oh my God. And my mother is totally, so it bonded us in a way that's unbelievable. Why does a CODA think the way he thinks? Well, what do you think? I was the conduit for the information to my mother. She loved it. On the way home, we were very silent, but yet connected. We were one. We shared this story together. It was unbelievable. And so that carried into watching television, black and white television. My father would sit there and watch the TV, just watching it. And I thought to myself, as a little boy, I said, what the heck does he even know what's going on? I said, Dad, what do you think's going on with the story right now? And he says, I don't know, I'm just making it up. They're just pictures. I couldn't take it. I said, well, let me interpret this story. So we used to watch Bonanza, The Fugitive, and the same thing. Anybody remember Bonanza? The Western? Hoss and Adam and Little Joe. Well, Hoss was the big dopey guy, Well, one time he gets married in this all happens in 60 minutes. He gets married to this woman, and she dies at the end of the episode because they can't afford to pay this actress to be on the show every week. Yeah. But my father, I'm sitting next to the television, and for the first time, my father's like getting the whole plot of I said, oh my God, this is great. And I'm Hoss, I'm Paul, I'm little, Hop Singh was the guy that cooked all the meals, But when she dies, my father started crying. He had an emotional reaction to it. It really struck me. Then I know I want to be an actor. I want to manipulate the emotions, But take it even further to, this is an interesting story coming from Chicago. Jack E. Leonard. Does anybody know who Jack E. Leonard was? All the older guys do. He was the beginning of what's known as the insult comics, like Don Rickles. Of course, everybody knows Don Rickles. And Jack E. Leonard is on the Ed Sullivan Show. And he was a big kind of guy, bald, and he was, hey, insult this guy and insult that guy. Hey, how do you like this? He's making fun of people. And I was sitting there watching, and I'm laughing because I don't even know what he's talking about. He's making fun of Ed Sullivan. And my father's sitting there just looking at the screen. And he never liked Bob Hope or guys like, just stood there. He goes, my dad say, is this guy funny? I go, yeah, Dad, everybody's laughing. He goes, yeah. He liked Red Skelton, Jackie Gleason, guys that were physical. You could actually see what was going on. So Jackie Leonard's, and my dad says, is this guy funny? I go, yeah, everybody's laughing in the audience. I can hear him. He's making fun of this guy. He goes, oh, really? I go, yeah. He goes, I know that guy. I said, you know him? You know Jackie Leonard? He goes, yeah. When I was a boy at the YMCA over here on, I think it's on Division in Milwaukee. I don't know if it's still there yet. My dad was a big goer there for the swimming pool, Him and his deaf buddies used to go there. And he tells me, Dad, this guy, he used to make fun of all the deaf guys around the swimming pool. And then he acted out what it looked like to be mocked, what it looked like to be made fun of, what it looked like to be different. And that did it for me. That was my dad. I could see what that had done to him. And I'm just telling you, I know this happens in this community also. Children can be cruel. Human beings can be cruel. But as I said yesterday when I was talking, there are more helpers than demeanors out there. If you ask for help and you explain your story and advocate for yourself, you'll find that they outweigh and outnumber the bad people that you're going to encounter, the negative people that you're going to encounter. And to go a little bit further with that, being from Chicago, it's a very racist city. I don't know if it still is today, but I'll tell you, when I was a little boy, my grandparents used the N-word all the time. They just spoke it like it was nothing. I'm a little kid, I'm growing up, and I'm learning all about racism because it was taught to me. I'm totally convinced that racism is taught. You have to learn that kind of behavior. It's not natural to feel this way about any other color of skin or any other medical condition you may be going through. It's not normal. It's not loving. It's not kind. But this is the way I was brought up in Chicago. The N-word just thrown around like water, like it's nothing. So I'm growing up using the N-word with my brothers, and this and that. And my mother could read lips. She was standing about where that pitcher of water is, and I'm talking to my brother and used the N-word. I know I did. And she came over to me and slapped me right across the face, just out of nowhere. I mean, what is this about? I don't understand this. Gramps says it all the time. I love Gramps. And she said to me, in her deaf accent voice, she said, do you know what that word means? I said, yeah, Gramps, and my other Gramps too. He uses it too. She said, I don't want to hear you ever say that word again. Do you know what it means? I said, what? I was shaking and crying. She said, it means less than. And if you want to call somebody an N, call your mother an N, because that's what I am. My whole life, I've been brought up to understand that I'm less than everybody else out there because I'm deaf. So if you want to use that word, call your mother that first, and then you can use it. So that was my big lesson on using the N word. And later on, I got a little smart about it. My grandfather was a big drinker. He used to take me to the bar there, and he'd have his Boilermaker. You know, it's a beer with a shot in it. And I'd be having my KO, sucking on my little straw with my gramps, who I loved, you know. And he would always talk about Ernie Banks. Ernie Banks was a black shortstop for the Chicago Cubs, beloved, a beloved ball player, beloved in this city. But at the time, when I was a little kid in the 50s, he didn't like the fact that blacks were breaking through into the major leagues. And, but he did like Ernie Banks because he was a good home run hitter. And so I look up at him at the bar. I said, Gramps, I thought Ernie Banks was an N. He goes, yeah, he is. I said, well, why do you like him and you don't like all the other ones that are trying to move in and buy your property levels and make the property levels go down? And he, my Gramps slapped me up the side of the head. He goes, you know, Paul, there's such a thing as being too smart. And he didn't want me to go to college or to a university because I might get too smart on him. I might lose my old racist ways. Everybody had to be Catholic. Nobody could be Jewish. Nobody could be, everybody had to be this certain way. So, in 1969, I turned 21 and I got drafted to go into Vietnam. So rather than go into the Army for 2 years, which I was afraid to do, I don't mind telling you, I went down the street and joined the Navy with my drummer and I, and I had a band at the time. I've always been in a band. My drummer and I went down the street, joined the Navy for 4 years. Instead of going to the jungle for 2. I thought that'd be a pretty good deal. And by the way, when I tell people that I'm a veteran of Vietnam, people like to thank me for my service. Please don't do that. You don't have to do it. It's not necessary. I was drafted. My life was interrupted. I went over there against my will. I did that because I'm an American, I guess. But it's particularly hard for me right now to watch Putin going into the Ukraine and do what he's doing. And when I realized that I did the same damn thing. There's no difference between what I did in Vietnam. I went to Vietnam twice. I did 2 tours. As a hospital corpsman, I was a medic. And there's no difference between what I did and what those young men are going through at the behest of Mr. Putin. So it's not necessary to thank me. But when I got back from Vietnam, I was a little upset. And I had a drug addiction, and I was angry that because I realized when I was over there what I was doing over there. I didn't know that until I got there. I always like to tell people I went into Vietnam as John Wayne, but I came out as Lenny Bruce because the truth was revealed to me, and I came back enlightened. So to show you the trajectory of how things happen. There was no sign language interpreting profession when I was a kid. I was the interpreter. I was the firstborn. I was the guy that had to go into the doctor's office with my father, who, you know, he's got a hemorrhoid problem. And he's telling me, tell the doctor it smells funny down there. And I'm like, yeah, this is just not comfortable. This is just not the way, there's got to be a better way to do this. Because if my father, well, why couldn't your father write on a piece of paper and then have a back and forth with the doctor? Well, it don't work that way because American Sign Language on paper, everything's the opposite. It goes, you know, it's like German. You turn the sentence around. It doesn't flow the way it's supposed to. So when the doctor reads it, it's going to look like broken English and it doesn't make, so hence I'm the sign language interpreter now, doing all this work for my dad and my mother, and parent-teacher conferences where I could, you know, and then I was like, oh, I could, yeah, Paul's doing good. So there are negatives when you look at the big picture of how manipulative a CODA can, and we CODAs like myself, we know that. So there was a profession that was just being started at that time when I came back in 73, sign language interpreters. And that's the last thing in the world I wanted to do. I wanted to get away from my parents. I wanted to get away from this world that I felt was keeping me so in a square box. I wanted to be somebody. I wanted to do something. And my deaf parents was like almost, yeah, you have to understand, it was embarrassing a little bit. It always drew attention to us. Now it's, this is a great time to be a deaf person. This is great. CODA, the movie CODA comes out. Everybody's signing, everybody's taking, that's great. Everybody's got technology. I'll text you here, I'll text you there. And in my day, there was none of that. It was just a lot of ridicule. Why are you doing that? Even when I'd go into a courtroom interpreting a traffic ticket for a deaf guy, the judge would be like, young man, Mr. Interpreter, what are you doing? Waving your hands. I mean, the whole thing of introducing something new into the system is a big inconvenience. Why are you waving? What is this? Why? Yeah, well, the guy's deaf. That's another thing I had to do for my dad. Going to court. Why is this guy drive? Well, deaf people can drive. They happen to have better driving records than hearing people because they're very focused on what's going on. They don't have the radio and they're like driving. My dad, he had a 57 Chevy. He installed, the rear view mirror. My dad was brilliant. He said, I got an idea. He installed a rear view mirror. We all have this rear view mirror. He put like 6 of them together, okay? And put it in there. He said, now I can see everything. The minute that he started driving around with it, he pulls over, I'm taking this damn thing down. It was, oh my God, there's too many things going on there. Because it looked like there were 60 cars in back of him instead of, So it was like that Archie Bunker thing. He's, I got to think of another thing. Not Archie Bunker, who's it? Ralph Gleason on The Honeymooners. He always had a scheme, My dad was trying to scheme his way out of just having one mirror. So sign language interpreting became a profession. I eventually did go into it because I was delivering Jack Daniel's liquor in a liquor truck. And that was hard work. And my mom's like, you don't have to do that, you can just interpret for a guy. There's a kid, he wants to go to like electrician school. So I went to this electrician school, and this deaf guy was #1 in his class. #1. All the hearing guys were going to him to figure out, but he was so focused, and I was his interpreter. He was a brilliant electrician. He's retired now. He's retired. He had a wonderful life, a wonderful family. But just to show you that people, Aristotle or Socrates, one of those guys, made some comment about deaf people that they're just not capable of cognitive thinking. They're not capable of being able to put stuff together, which is how could a guy so smart be so stupid? People are people, they just need a chance. Let me get a thing of water. Thank you. So, caretakers. I was always called a caretaker because I was the conduit for my mother and father. However, when the profession became a profession, we had to get licensed and certified to do the work that we do. To work in a courtroom, you just can't walk in there and do a court. You've got to be trained and then certified. So we just, I don't know if this is a problem for you, but we have had a hard time getting the public to understand that, no, I don't work for a church. I'm not a church volunteer. I'm not a caretaker. I'm a professional sign language interpreter. So that's been a struggle. Even today, when people find out who I am or what I do or how I grew up, it often comes up, oh, so you must work with a church organization. No, I've interpreted in church. I've done that, but they pay me, So that's been a problem. One thing, and I'm sure this, maybe a lot of you in this room can relate to, I can tell you honestly I can count, let's see, on this hand, about 3, maybe 4 times in my lifetime. I'm 74 now, but it happened a lot when I was a kid. When I would tell people that my parents were deaf, first of all, they'd say, "Oh, they're dead. I'm so sorry." No, I didn't say they're dead. They're deaf. Oh, they're deaf. And I swear to God, I'm not even exaggerating. They go, "Oh, they're deaf. So they actually had sex, or how does that work? Did they? So what do you think? The mailman came along and took care of it? I mean, yeah, deaf people have sex." And I'm like 8 years old, and I'm trying to explain. Yeah, I guess they had sex. I don't know. I wasn't there, but when I talk to other people, other conferences, I've been to a few disability conferences, a lot of wheelchair people, blind people, people that are deaf and blind. God, you mean wheelchair people like sex? They have sex, they think about sex. Yeah. I think that the world needs to be educated a little bit about what's going on here. That's a horrible way to look at, and it's a dehumanizing way to look at anybody, to think that you don't have the same aspirations or wants or needs or dreams that any normal person might have. So that's another part of self-advocacy, and not being afraid to talk about things that you might think are a little uncomfortable or inappropriate. How inappropriate is asking if my parents had sex? I mean, come on. But that's how it went down. So it's reactions and judgment that we want to try and address. So they're telling me it's time to go, but I'm going to just tell you one story here. When my whole life, people have told me, "God, your story is so interesting. You should write a movie about that." So I did. I wrote a movie about it about 6 times over the course of 25 years. Never got made. But what I did was put the vibration or the thought out into the universe. My life is worthwhile. My story is worth telling. My community, my deaf and my CODA community is worth talking about and educating the world. So I put that out there, and lo and behold, another guy caught that vibration and wrote Sound of Metal. He wrote that movie. It's the same character, the one I played in the movie. It's the same character that I was trying to write for myself so I could become a movie star. But that's not the way it happened. That's not the way, I don't know how it works. But I do know that if you tell your story, people will listen. And if you advocate for yourself, people will understand. You can't be afraid. When I've got my Black Sabbath tribute band in LA, I do the whole show in sign language. That all happened by accident. I was just in a Black Sabbath tribute band. I'm the lead singer of the band. But we decided to do one song in American Sign Language, and it went viral. So now these hardcore Black Sabbath players that I play with, they came up to me and said, "Let's do the whole show that way." So this is nothing that I planned on. When Sound of Metal was made, I want to tell you this so we can get into some positive thinking. Darius Martyr, the director, called me on the phone, and he said, "Guess what, Paul? Sound of Metal is getting Academy Award buzz, but I'm calling you to let you know that you're nobody. Nobody knows who you are. Not that you're nobody, you're an actor, but nobody knows you, so you're probably not going to get nominated. I don't want you to feel disappointed. You're a wonderful actor. Please don't feel bad." So I go, "Thank you. Thanks a lot." But it happened anyway. When I filmed that last scene in Sound of Metal, I went back to my hotel room and I cried my eyes out because I knew I had done something special. I knew I had put everything on the screen. And so that night, That night, I wrote my Oscar nomination speech and put it in my pocket. And the night that I was there at the Academy Awards, that speech was in my pocket. I didn't win, but I didn't have to win. I won anyway. I know I read the material that said there's no cure. And that upset me. Because there's no cure right now. People used to ask my father, "You mean to tell me you've never heard anything in your whole life?" My dad would go, "Not yet." You have to believe that this is going to happen. There's an old story, it's been around for years, and spiritual gurus tell it all the time, about the shaman who was living in the middle of a drought, and everybody came and said, "What should we do? We need water. What should we do?" And he said, "Dig the trenches." What the hell does that mean? That's not going to help us get water. Dig the trenches, do the work, and wait in anticipation. Believe, believe, believe. For one moment, right here, right now, I believe that prayer or positive thinking is it's not about words, it's about a feeling tone, okay? If you all would just for one moment with me, I want you, how would it feel? How would it feel if somebody made an announcement today that there is a cure for NF, that we've found more drugs, that this is over? How would that feel? And I know that a lot of you are afraid to go there and say, "Well, I don't want to go there because I don't want to be disappointed." Please, please, believe, believe, believe. Tomorrow doesn't exist. There's no tomorrow. That's out there. And you have to reach into tomorrow and pull it into your chest right here and believe that it's possible. If you're not willing to do that with me right now, then what the hell are we doing here? You have to believe. You have to think that way. Nobody's going to think that way for you. Say yes. The universe, God, whatever you call that, doesn't know how to say no. We're our worst enemy. The universe is always saying yes. It's always going, okay. And if you say to yourself, "There's no cure," what does the universe say? "You're right. There's no cure." There is a cure. It's out there. It's there right now. It's there right now. Believe, believe, believe. And I don't care how long it takes. If you waver in your belief, you're going to make it seem longer. I'm living in answered prayer right now. I have 4 movies coming out next year and a television show. My life is one big blessing because of my parents, because of my CODA community. And I get an extra blessing with this trip I made to Chicago to get to know the NF community, what it means for you people, what you're going through. My heart really is with you today. And your struggle, the struggle is real. I need you to believe. You need to believe for each other. So if you take anything from what I'm talking about today, just take that and know that that is what's going to push us over the finish line. I love you all very much.